Tonight, is the province's reopening plan in jeopardy?
I'm very concerned. It seems like we are regressing to back where we were in March.
With COVID-19 cases continuing to climb, officials push back the date for expanding social gatherings. Plus,
it was like a rock concert without the band.
Scenes like that are clearly unacceptable.
all eyes on Trinity Bellwoods, the fallout after a huge crowd gathered there this weekend. And cooling centers are set to open as temperatures climb, but for those who need relief, pandemic restrictions are limiting their options. Good evening, I'm Marivel Tarouk. A concerning trend in the province's battle to contain COVID-19. For the past 2 weeks, Ontario's daily count of new infections has been climbing. That's raising questions about whether the province should reimpose restrictions that were lifted earlier this month. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
People wait at a COVID-19 assessment centre in Toronto. Will their tests turn out positive, adding to Ontario's stubbornly high count of new cases?
As soon as we see these numbers climb a bit, you get a little gun shy. We thought we were going down a couple of weeks ago, and then all of a sudden it jumped up a little bit over the last week. So we have to keep a sharp eye on it.
This graph shows how Ontario's daily number of new cases peaked in late April, then dropped through early May. But for the past 2 weeks, the numbers are rising, and the experts are worried.
Clearly problematic. It's obviously an arrow pointing in the wrong direction.
I'm very concerned. It seems like we are regressing to back where we were in March.
It's concerning that we're in the 400s as we begin to reopen, and I think it's concerning when you factor in that we are not testing at our capacity.
Why are the numbers headed this way? It's too soon to be triggered by the reopening of retail shops to customers. Think back earlier in May, says the health minister.
Mother's Day events and so on, people seeing families when they should not have been more than 5 people together.
So what happens now? After tentatively opening up, are Ontario's infection numbers so high that the province should shut back down again? Not necessarily.
We're not yet at numbers where we are going to be overwhelmed on the hospital side, but that could definitely change in the coming days if we start to see ongoing rise in cases.
Another factor weighing against a province-wide shutdown, many parts of Ontario are seeing barely any new infections. Toronto and the GTA account for nearly 2/3 of the new cases.
Then you could really just tailor your approach to that problem. So if say all you know is that it's a lot of cases in Toronto, that doesn't make much sense that in Kingston that you should be shutting down parks there, right?
For now, Ontario's political and public health leaders are waiting to see what happens with the numbers this week before deciding whether they need to shut things down in this province once again. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Thousands of people descending on Trinity Bellwoods Park on Saturday sparked outrage and concern. Now, Toronto's chief medical health officer is telling anyone who was there to monitor for COVID-19 symptoms for 2 weeks. Premier Doug Ford is going further, urging them to go get tested now. And the city wants to make sure it doesn't happen again. Angelina King has more.
This scene from Saturday upsetting to many, from residents and politicians to business owners and frontline doctors, even the Prime Minister addressing it.
We do not want to see a resurgence of the virus.
I'm really hurt when I see that.
It was like a rock concert without the band.
Scenes like that are clearly unacceptable.
The people that are supposed to be enforcing aren't doing anything.
On Saturday, 10 bylaw enforcement officers and several police were assigned to Trinity Bellwoods Park. 12 people were ticketed for public urination. 14 tickets were issued across all Toronto parks to people not physical distancing on Saturday, and since the bylaw was introduced at the beginning of April, just over 200 tickets have been written. But on Saturday at Trinity Bellwoods, 0 tickets for physical distancing were issued.
We were enforcing, but unfortunately, the numbers were huge.
Police say engaging with crowds that size at any time has the potential to put the public and officers at risk. After Saturday, people got the hint. The next day, a completely different looking park with more enforcement. And today, the mayor saying the city is reviewing what took place.
We've asked them to come back with a plan that includes considerations of policing and enforcement. It includes considerations of how you can help people to physically distance themselves.
Which includes creating physical distancing circles like these ones in New York.
I think they're trying to grab that normal back a little bit, and they're suddenly hearing from the rest of us like, just not cool.
He says some people are dealing with isolation fatigue. The weather is warm, things are reopening, and the novelty of virtual hangouts has worn off.
It's a combination of factors, but it's certainly upsetting. It's probably going to set us back. And in somewhere like Ontario, where the cases are already steadily rising in the last week, it's very concerning.
So concerning that today the provincial health minister said those two things combined, the increase in new cases and the crowding at Trinity Bellwoods on Saturday, has forced the government to push back the date, which would allow more than 5 people to get together. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
So what would happen if someone who was at Trinity Bellwoods this weekend tested positive? Experts say an event like this has the potential to cause a spike in COVID cases.
We know that the more people are talking or singing or exerting themselves, that's an increased risk of spread and exposure.
To limit that spread, one of the more than 550 contact tracers at the city would get in touch with the infected person's immediate contacts, meaning people they were at the park with and people they live with. Those contacts would be told to get tested and go into isolation. And if any of them test positive, their contacts would be notified. It's all a lot of work for people tasked with that job.
And then when we get in touch with you, we have to actually go back 14 days. I mean, can you remember what you did 5 days ago? You know, how can we jog your memory? Well, that might mean having to go to some of your records, maybe check in your emails, maybe check your credit card statements to see, well, what were you up to?
And because so many people were at the park, identifying all the contacts would be virtually impossible. In that case, the health unit may put out a public message asking anyone at the park to get tested and to self-isolate. A heat warning is in effect tonight for Toronto, with temperatures expected to climb into the 30s over the next few days. The city has opened some of its cooling centers, but as Natalie Nanowski explains, it's a fraction of what's usually available to those in need.
This Regent Park Community Centre is only one of 6 buildings that Toronto will open to the public during the city's first heat wave.
Hot weather can be dangerous to your health. Impacts range from relatively mild symptoms like heat rash through to more serious ones like heat exhaustion and heat stroke.
Usually some of the city's most vulnerable and those without air conditioning have access to libraries, shopping malls, and splash pads to cool down in. But those are all closed due to COVID-19.
They're just not in operation at the moment for health-related reasons. So what we have done is put in place 6 locations for publicly accessible air-conditioned places located across the city,
including this one on Dufferin Road, where city staff will be on site offering aid while maintaining a physical distance. The mayor wants people to use these venues as a last resort, asking people to stay home during the hottest parts of the day or seek shade when outside. But if the demand for these centers is too high, he says the city will open up more spaces.
We will find other places where we can put those kinds of facilities in place so they're available to people who are suffering from what is expected to be very high levels of heat.
There are concerns that the city's homeless, many of whom are now avoiding shelters and public services due to the pandemic, will suffer during these next few hot days. So outreach workers will be out on the streets tonight explaining where the emergency cooling centers are and moving some people into shaded spots. Starting tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. until Wednesday, these 6 sites are going to be publicly accessible for people to come in, cool down, and get a drink of water. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
City Council will vote later this week on a proposal to accelerate the installation of new bike routes. The plan calls for 40 kilometers of new bike infrastructure around the city, and it's expected to be up and running in a matter of weeks. Greg Ross has more.
The mayor tweeted out a video today showing his support for a new proposal to fast-track 40 kilometers of cycling infrastructure.
We're trying to open up the city, give people more room to move, make sure they can get around with physical distancing and with good health.
The mayor saying that bike lanes are a necessity during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is why the plan is pushing to have them in place by the summer.
Instead of waiting years for new cycling infrastructure, Council is directing staff to install it in a matter of weeks.
15 kilometers of new bike lanes were already in the works for this year, but there was no firm plan in place for the other 25 kilometers, which include areas like the Danforth, Bloor Street East, University Avenue, and a large portion of Bloor Street West.
The program in front of us with ActiveTO is primarily for protected bike lanes. That's with real separation. Certainly when we look at Bloor and Danforth and University Avenue, we know that that separation will be coming and in fact is critical.
Great news for cyclists who are already using the roads without bike lanes.
Getting doored is one of my worst fears.
But there is some concern for people who own businesses in those areas.
They try to make the one lane here. Please, over my dead body.
This man owns a flower shop on Bloor Street West. He's worried about losing street parking in front of his store and added traffic.
If anybody stops to make a left turn or right turn, all the car following, they have to stop. It's going to be a disaster.
City Councillor Stephen Holliday agrees.
Let's think about what things will be like in September, after Labor Day, October and November, when cycling is way down.
But those in favor say this is about changing the way people think about commuting.
But fundamentally, this is about redesigning our streets from moving cars to moving people.
What am I supposed to tell a resident in Etobicoke not to drive their car into the city and to bike all the way into work? 10, 20 kilometers a day? Cycling isn't available. It's not an available option for everybody.
Holiday is also concerned about the $6 million price tag for these bike lanes when we could be headed for a big recession. City Council will vote on the proposal Thursday. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And it's amazing how many patients are calling us and saying, I'm overdue.
I desperately need my teeth cleaned.
Get ready to open wide. Dentists are hoping to welcome back patients again soon. We'll tell you what that initial reopening will look like coming up. Plus,
well, here we are into our first heat event of the season. Not only that, but some active weather bubbling up as well. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. I'll tell you how long this extreme heat is going to last and also what you need to do to take care of yourself. That's all coming up after the break.
A new food bank opened in Toronto today to help with the new demand surging due to the pandemic.
I encourage everyone, no matter where you are in Ontario, please go to your food bank, your local food bank, support them.
I think maybe this pandemic has taught us a lot of lessons, obviously, but I think it's taught us a lesson, that is how thin the line is between people who are on Monday living a normal life, able to look after themselves and so on, and on Tuesday something happens that can cause them to fall on the wrong side of that thin line and need help.
The Daily Bread Food Bank opened a warehouse in Etobicoke in partnership with Feed Ontario and its new emergency food box program, which is funded by the province. The new space is a distribution hub. More than 60,000 food boxes will be stored there. Typically, that would last the food bank 1 month, but during the pandemic, those boxes will all be given out in the next 2 weeks. Some Toronto library locations are now accepting book returns. Starting today, 17 locations are accepting the return of materials to drop boxes. It's the first phase of the library's reopening plan. Next week, more drop boxes will be opened. Then, starting early next month, the library will begin offering curbside pickup of holds at certain branches. For now, the library is asking that you only return books, magazines, DVDs, CDs, or audiobooks. Colette Kennedy joins us now with a look at your forecast. We seem to go from one extreme to another. Is there no happy medium with this spring weather, Colette?
Oh boy, Mariville, what a change up, right? As we were into early spring, the temperatures were cool, below seasonal, and now we're getting closer to late spring, and boy, oh boy, that heat is in place. So we do have the heat warning here. It's not just for what we experienced today. This carries on to about midweek before it starts to improve, and actually it'll hang on more from Tuesday to about Thursday for eastern Ontario. So highs near 30, 32 degrees, humidex values, more importantly, how it's going to feel 35 to 40. And even our overnight lows, we just don't get much relief when you're seeing your lows at 20 degrees. So just a reminder, this is our first heat event of the season. You need to drink lots of water and take it easy out there. Cool showers can help. Loose clothing can help. Stay in the shade if you can find some. We've got a lot of sunshine in the forecast. And certainly don't leave pets in the car in this kind of heat. They cannot stand that. Now, for your daytime temperatures, look at how things progressed here. 20 degrees at 6 a.m., already 20 degrees in Toronto, and then by noon up to 30. Back towards Windsor, slightly cooler at 26 degrees, up to 30 there, though by 4 p.m. and still lots of upper 20s and a few low 30s. And at one point, Hamilton, yes, the hot spot in Ontario today at 32.4 degrees. So we're seeing quieter conditions through the overnight, even though we did have some active weather and some thunderstorms earlier on. And then tomorrow, because this air is buoyant with the sunshine, we get that daytime heating, and we'll see a few thunderstorms popping up again tomorrow. So that risk is there. Very hard to pinpoint exactly where they'll be, but not so much for the GTA. It looks more like north to the south around the Niagara region, and then back towards southwestern Ontario, having that risk as well. Not so much into Wednesday as what we're going to see for tomorrow afternoon. There are your lows. It almost seems like these are the daytime highs. Nope, those are your lows for tonight. Here you go for tomorrow afternoon, keeping in mind that humidex, a few isolated showers or thunderstorms here. And then as we go towards the GTA overnight tonight, very similar conditions with those lows. And tomorrow afternoon, as warm, in some cases actually warmer than today, feeling like those upper 30s to near 40 degrees. Wednesday, no relief yet. Thursday, we start to transition, so about 27 for the daytime high. Humidity still there. Starts to come down further, though, into Friday. The temperature and the humidity certainly both drop off, Marivelle, as we get towards Saturday of next weekend. So a hot, steamy week ahead.
Lots to get through till Saturday. Thanks, Colette.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a train.
Dentists across the province are ramping up to partially reopen their doors. New guidelines are in place allowing dentists to provide essential non-urgent procedures. Kelda Yoon explains what will be offered and the precautions that will be in place.
That feels so good. I really appreciate it. It was a busy afternoon outside North York Smile Centre as patients stopped by for a quick catch-up with dentist Dr. Rob Eisen, who was handing out bags of dental must-haves like toothpaste and floss.
I'm here for the free swag. It's been a long time since I saw my hygienist and dentist, so I miss them.
And it's amazing how many patients are calling us and saying, I'm overdue.
For the past 2 months, Eisen has only been able to see emergency patients.
Essentially, extractions, infections, something that needs immediate.
That list can now be expanded. The Royal College of Dental Surgeons of Ontario has announced it is now entering phase 2 of reopening, which means essential procedures will be allowed.
So there are some things that a dentist can talk to you over the telephone and say, if you let that go along much longer, that could actually start to cause real problems. So it's being able to anticipate, I think, a little bit more.
But if someone breaks a tooth or needs a root canal, that would be essential care.
But with this comes enhanced precautions.
This goes on first.
That's the N95 mask, followed by another mask, a face shield, and gloves. Those requirements are particularly important for procedures that generate aerosols.
If a dentist is doing work with a drill, it's creating an aerosol, little droplets, some larger droplets in the air. And of course, we've come to understand that that's one of the main ways that COVID-19 is transmitted.
I'm in that age group over 60. I shouldn't say that. But no, so I'm just concerned.
But after speaking with Dr. Eisen, Gary Meister says he feels reassured.
Part of this is just making them feel safe. A big part of it is in telling them how we're going to do things without freaking them out.
The third and final stage will be next. That will include all non-essential procedures like fillings and cleanings.
See you guys soon. Yeah, for sure.
Kelly Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, today's frontline hero. Stick around for that. We'll be right back. Once every week or so, Karen LeBlanc steps onto her front porch near the Distillery District to belt out a tune in support of frontline workers. Her neighbor sent us a message saying not only does LeBlanc have an amazing voice, she also brings people together, reminding them of the power of community and positive thinking. Turns out LeBlanc is a singer and actress well known for her Tina Turner impressions. Take a listen to why she decided to start her porch performances.
You come to me wild, wild.
When everything first started, I was just so moved by seeing the singers just go out on the balcony and, you know, share the love, raise the frequency. Kind of music is really healing, and so it was that. I didn't jump on the idea immediately after. It was probably when my postman came to the door. This is probably the second week of March, and I couldn't open the door for him, and I felt horrible. I wanted to run and thank all the frontline heroes, so I was inspired to go out on the patio. And I thought, close the windows, open the windows, it can float across the airwaves. Turns out people stopped and at a social distance, clapped along, sang along, and I think it was a pleasant surprise. So the theme song, which I will always continue to sing for the front line, is simply the best. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I love my community, and I know we thank you. I realize that more than ever now, the sense of community, how important that is, and it's really nice to feel connected to the street and really acknowledge your neighbors from a distance and understand that everybody is collectively going through this very difficult and devastating time. Simply the best. Thank you, Frontline. You are simply the best. Thank you for your courage, everybody. Mwah. Stay safe.
You're the best too, Karen. Thank you for everything you're doing. And we're still accepting submissions. You can share your frontline hero with us on Twitter or Instagram at CBC Toronto. Message us on Facebook or email us at torontotips@cbc.ca. So great. That's our newscast for you tonight. Thank you for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night, everyone.